All right, welcome to the show. Today we sit down with Steve Dubbeldam from Wilderness Collective. Wilderness is a great episode. Wilderness is such a cool company. They set out with a goal to inspire and equip people to discover a rhythm of adventure in their own lives. So Steve is a rad dude. We get to hear his story and kind of what Wilderness is up to, and just the placeholder that adventure has, particularly in the lives of men. So check it out. Thanks for listening, and share it with your friends. This episode is brought to you by Kenda Tire. We're super grateful for our sponsors. They make the show possible. And thank you for listening to the ads and for checking them out. It's pretty cool. So I recently installed a set of the new Kenda Cleaver AT2s, which are their second generation tire that are designed to give you like more of a smooth, quiet ride without sacrificing traction, great durability. And what I like the most is that they're aggressive, but they're not noisy. And so we threw a set on my wife's Grand Cherokee and totally love them. Like the first thing is just how they look. They look really awesome. And man, every time I look at the Jeep, it's like, dude, this thing looks like a different machine. So I'm stoked about that. It just looks like went kind of from like soccer mom mobile to an adventure machine. And we recently took the Jeep on a 1,000-mile plus trip up to the north woods of Wisconsin and drove mostly on road, but definitely did some dirt and off pavement stuff. And they were just perfect, man. We loved them. A little quieter than the RT, but also they still have an aggressive look. So go check out Kenda Tire Cleaver AT2. Slap them on your Scout, your Jeep, wife's minivan, whatever. They're coming out with more and more sizes, and they're a great company and they stand by their products. So thanks for that, Kenda. Thanks for sponsoring. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at FSR, Free Spirit Recreation. Want to talk about specifically the Free Spirit Odyssey, which is their new super slim line, just really amazing hard shell tent. I've had the privilege to spend probably 30 nights in it with myself and with my wife, and just great. Like the coolest thing about it is the slim profile. It's like 7 inches top to bottom. You can also put a roof rack on top of the hard shell, which you can mount solar panels, bicycles. We put surfboards up there, kayaks, and it allows you to keep that stuff on there, I think up to like 200 pounds while it's opening. Another cool feature, the setup time is unreal. Literally 90 seconds, you are completely ready for entrance and egress, man. So fast. And lastly, I think what's cool is the hard shell, the way it opens to the side, it blocks the wind, so you can put that on the wind side, and there's also like an air gap between the hard shell tent and the actual tent itself, if that makes sense. The hard shell and the rooftop tent, which creates just less condensation, better heat management, and with tri-layer, super warm in the winter, cooler in the summer. Overall, just a great quality tent. I know it's like a premium product, but if you want to get something that you're going to invest in and keep for a long time, I definitely recommend it. It's available in two sizes, the 49 and the 55. I have the 55, which is perfect for two people and our bags. So anyway, go check out Free Spirit Recreation and check out the Odyssey, man, if you're in the market for a rooftop tent, which you should be because they are rad. Anyway, Free Spirit Recreation. And one last thing I wanted to draw your attention to. We are partnering with our friends from Hemmings Motor to sell a couple of my babies. So as some of you know, I've had a very, very small, inconsequential, but cool 80s turbo car collection, like domestic 80s turbo cars. So I have a 1985 and a half Chrysler Laser Turbo 5-speed, really quirky car, talking computer, things just super cool. So that is going up for sale. And the Ford Probe, the 1989 Ford Probe GT white 5-speed, say it again, turbo. Both really cool cars, kind of time capsule cars, driver quality, just get in them, have fun. Those are both coming up probably next week. So go to Hemmings, sign up, and then search for those vehicles, and let's have some fun, man. If you want a cool 80s car, I have some new cars coming in the collection that I'll talk to you about in the episodes. But yeah, go check out Hemmings. Episode of the New Legend podcast, here with a new friend, Steve Dubbeldam from Wilderness. It's just straight up Wilderness, right?
Everyone shortens it, so we knew that going into it.
What is it?
Just Wilderness Collective.
Collective, that's right.
But our Instagram is just Wilderness, which I'm proud of. We got in early.
That is awesome. So we are going to talk about some really good stuff because Steve's got a great team and a great company here, and we're at Wilderness HQ. Cool place. Just a fun little tidbit. We just repainted one of our buildings, and my wife was like, "You gotta paint it black, man." And my employees are like, "That's stupid. Like it should be white or it should be gray." And like Heather's like, "No, we gotta do black." And so I pull up, and you guys have a rad black building.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Steve, let's just jump right into it, and then we'll get to kind of weave your story in. But
sure.
Why is adventure so important in our modern context?
I mean, doing what I do, I guess I've got a lot of thoughts about that. I think, adventure is a really important, what do you want to call it? It's an outlet, I think, for people these days. I think that there's, you look at culture writ large right now, and people are struggling to find connection with themselves, with others, with nature. And so I think that we talk about this idea of building a rhythm of adventure into your life a lot at Wilderness. And that idea is like, you don't need to come on a trip with us every month, but I think as humans, we're wired to need something to look forward to. So it's like, if you've got these adventures kind of dotted throughout your calendar of the year, then you've got something with anticipation, so it can help you kind of get through whatever it is you're dealing with in the moment and push through, because you know that you've got that release coming up. Now, and I think that a proper adventure, right, is where there's an element, you're bringing together a couple of things. You're bringing together unknown, somewhere you've never been before, or maybe you're going with a machine you've never used before, or a method of transportation. There's risk involved, usually like some level of, real or apparent risk. And I think that, a legit adventure is when you don't know the outcome specifically, when you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and so you're kind of like putting a couple great things into a bag and shaking it up and seeing what happens, and so that's a little bit of, I think, why it's important. I think that especially now, like in our always on, overly connected, like world, it's really important to mix into our adventures an element of like disconnecting from our day-to-day life. So whether that's you're going somewhere new that's a different culture or climate than you normally go to, or you go so far as to like on our trips where we like literally take our clients' phones away. Because we're like, this is the greatest gift we can give you for 4 days, is to just rip this away from you.
And has that been met with any resistance ever?
Well, we've been doing it since day one. So for, 8-9 years, I always had that idea to make it a digital detox. And so it's become more and more powerful for people as the world has progressed. So maybe 8 or 9 years ago, people were like, sure, whatever, take my phone. Now people are like, oh my gosh, like get rid of it. Like, please take it away, And so there's little pushback. The pushback is only, folks who are just trying to be responsible, who are like, hey, like I've got a family, or like my kid's got a condition, I need to be accessible. And like, of course, we have a sat phone with us. It's like, like we've got the technology that we need out there. The whole point is, I don't want you to be halfway through the trip, get over this like summit where there's happens to be a shred of cell service, and you get an email or a notification that breaks the spell, ruins your trip. It pulls you back into your normal life, because we work so hard to build what I like to call a distraction-free environment. So we don't want that spell to be broken. And another thing is like the phone is a camera, you know,
That's
and so we don't let people bring cameras on our trips either, because we're bringing a pro photographer and videographer. And the idea there, sometimes people will push back on that. They're like, oh, but I love to shoot photos. And I'm like, well, you know, don't mean this in the wrong way, but like our guys will do a better job than you will. But more importantly, like I want you to say you're sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon on the last day of one of our trips. I want you to just be there, present, sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, instead of trying to take a photo of yourself looking present, sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, right? So like our culture, we are obsessed with documenting absolutely everything. And so we're trying to even document ourselves being detoxed.
Yes.
It's this very weird thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, takes mental effort and exercise, I think, to just be in that moment and be like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to remember this. Because what helps you remember something is to notice. So you're sitting there in the example, you're on the edge of the Grand Canyon and you're tuning in. You're like, okay, what am I hearing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling right now? That's what builds a memory that actually lasts longer than a week.
Yeah, that's
like that's how you can tell a story of an adventure to your grandkids 20, 30 years later.
Because I find it like, dude, I'm sure you've experienced this on your own trips, but I don't often, but it's like when I forget my phone and I just go to the store and I feel so weird.
Yeah.
So is 4 days enough? Do you find like at the end of 4 days, like people are settling into and they say, I feel free?
Yeah, I think day one, people always talk about like they feel like the phantom buzz or whatever, you know, and it's legit. And by like day two, no one's even talking about work or their emails or whatever. The only thing is, you know, they'll be sharing ideas like, oh, I need to write that down, you know, and so like we'll supply a little journal sometimes for guys, and, you know, give them a way to log their thoughts.
So how do you think that, because I have to imagine that in the pioneer days, people weren't seeking out, like they were still tackling mountains, and there was this great age of kind of exploration and adventure. But how do you think that transpired to where people, and this is like, I think it's a wonderful thing that what you're doing, but at some point it's shifted to like, we need friends and businesses to help us, to help curate, to take down barriers to entry, to help us get, because otherwise like so many people in America just don't do it.
Yeah.
They'll go years and just keep grinding in their office job.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that as a culture? Do you think it's been like a gradual kind of since the 50s or post World War II or?
Yeah, you know, and thinking back, like when did that shift start? It's probably just coincided, like it's directly inverse of like the growth of civilization and like urbanization.
Yeah.
It's probably directly inverse with people's diminishing comfort level of being out in the elements, kind of not in civilization, right? So it's directly inverse. So I think now you get to a point where people, they feel like they do need a guide, they do need a Sherpa, they need someone to show them the way, to give them the confidence or the tools or the know-how. I think part of it too is like there's a well-documented loss of rites of passage in our culture.
That's huge, man.
Yeah, and so I think that like for myself, like I grew up in Canada on 40 acres in the middle of nowhere in Alberta. So a lot of what was normal for me is not normal for other folks in the way that they grew up, you know, or it's like, you know, and not that like I was a pioneer or anything, but it's like my dad built our house with his two hands and like literally cleared the land.
That's cool.
You know, so it's like that's the narrative that I grew up in, where it was like very like resourceful and like you figure it out, you do it yourself, you know. We were always camping, we were always outside, always fixing stuff, you know. We never brought our vehicles to the repair shop, like, so I just grew up being like, okay, you figure it out.
Right.
Then when other people see that in action, they're like, how did you learn this? Who taught you this? And it's like, it's just over time, right? It's having a mentor. That mentor was my dad. For a lot of people, they don't have that, unfortunately. So they're looking for someone to be that, whether that's a brand, whether that's an experience that they paid for, whether that's a relationship that they're seeking out, like a formal mentor, whatever it is.
Channels on YouTube that are like documenting
100%. Yeah, like we're all looking for someone who's gone there before, you know. So I think that's a part of like what we do is like, you know, if you've got a desire to do this type of trip or adventure X, you've got the desire to do it, but you just don't have the tool set, the skill set, well, then come with us, and we'll help you.
Yeah. So I want to talk a lot about like some of the specifics you've developed, but so as people are probably like, I still don't know what Wilderness Collective is.
Sure.
So we're talking about trips, we're talking about doing this stuff, but how did it kind of develop? So you're a Canadian boy, like when did you move to the States? Like how did you move to a city and like circuit? Like I gotta get back to my roots.
Yeah, I've been living in LA for 15 years.
Okay.
So I moved, 15, 16 years maybe. So I moved down here like in my early 20s. Started a clothing company in Canada with my best friend.
Okay.
So we ended up moving to LA because it was a denim brand, like high-end denim. It's kind of like the denim.com moment.
Yeah.
So we started a brand and found some investors down here and basically like told our parents, we're moving to a different country, bye. So that started our big adventure in America pretty much. And we ran that brand for 3 years, did another clothing company for 2 years. Then I did like a accessories and luggage brand with the same business partner, my friend. And then kind of was always doing entrepreneurial startups. And I helped my wife get like a media company off the ground. But I think the through line was that all my friends down here in LA, everyone's super creative, everyone's really ambitious, really entrepreneurial, everyone's chasing something. So we're all working like crazy, but loving it.
Yep.
But I was always the ringleader who was like, hey, I bought a $500 Hobie Cat sailboat on Craigslist. Let's see if we can sail it to the Channel Islands. Like, what could go wrong? Yeah. Or I'd be like, I bought a dirt bike for $600 and there's a squirrel living in the airbox, but I can fix it. Let's go to Baja.
Yeah.
So I was always the friend I was sort of the organizer of my friends. And what I found is when I would put together these little sketchy camping trips or moto trips or whatever it was, is that you gain more relational capital in a weekend with some of your friends than in a year's worth of let's grab a beer or let's have a coffee. So it's the power of immersive shared experience. And I just kind of like, it's that light bulb that starts many great businesses. Like if it's good for you, it could be good for other people.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is really healthy for me. It's a healthy rhythm for me and my friends to actually get into some real conversations. Like you actually can remember the conversations that you have around a fire. There's like something kind of opens up in you, I think. And especially as men, I think that like a lot of like the walls that we would normally have up where there's like the surface level conversation, you can just go several levels deeper when you're sitting under the stars.
Do you see like, so I think like every dude that I know can relate to that and go like, yeah, there is something cool about sitting around a campfire.
Yeah.
But you've had this opportunity, this rare social observation of like hundreds of trips.
Yeah.
Thousands of people.
Thousands of people.
Do you see that as like a real thing, like almost like a scientific thing? Like dudes just start getting deeper as the trips go.
Oh yeah, it's a formula. Like you take people out of their comfort zone. You kick the crap out of them all day. You give them an amazing meal and a great drink and sit them around by the fire and you just let it happen.
And then they probably sleep like babies.
Yeah, exactly. They sleep great too. No, but it really is like, it is absolutely, I think, it's not that every single night around the fire we're like solving, all the problems in the world. But it really is like,
that's awesome, man. It
just provides some different environment. I like to talk about like what we do on our trips is like our job is to create context for people. I think an adventure creates context for growth. It doesn't guarantee growth, so you can come on our trips and be like, I just wanted to friggin' ride a dirt bike and rip around,
right? And
like you'll get that.
Yep.
We can do that.
Yep.
But if you want to come on our trips and like walk away inspired to be a new person or to take the next step towards changing your life, like that's there too. But it's up to you to grab onto it, right? Do
you facilitate that aspect at all, or is this part of the culture?
Yeah, so there's private trips that we do where someone like a thought leader will come on the trip and do some program stuff, like an author or a counselor or a coach. So some trips it's very intentional and we're always careful to match the expectation. Hey, you're going into this trip with where this is going to be a part of it. Our normal trips, there's no program, but the adventure is the program.
That's right.
Right? So, and, I'll just wait till it's done. That's great. Great for the audio.
Yeah.
We're in a working shop here.
Working shop, man.
I'll say this, that we don't have a set like program. However, like I said, we have a formula.
Yes.
Right. So like the trips, they reveal themselves in a very, kind of a consistent way. And so, around the fire, the first night, like I do have my guides ask some form of a question. It's like, hey, what's your name? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Why are you here? But what we'll like to push it a bit further and say, like, why is it good for you to be here right now? So part of what we try to do on the trips is help people realize they might think they signed up just for a moto ride. And throughout the trip, we're helping them realize why they're really there. Because they might not have realized why they saw the ad, thought this looks awesome, felt like I need to do this. But by day 3 or 4, they're actually maybe realizing why they really needed this at a deep level. So definitely my staff does an incredible job of living the vision of the business, but also helping people unpack that stuff.
And you get like, I don't know much about the trips, but are they mostly males?
Yeah, mostly. So for the first 7 years or so, that was really like what we were focused on was like guys trips.
Yep.
Then as we started to offer a few more options, like our side-by-side UTV trips, all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is like great for couples. It's great for fathers and their kids. And we've started to like add new types of trips. But at the end of the day, our customer base really is guys who are looking to reconnect either with their grown kids, their college buddies, their brothers. It's like these things that I felt like I did a lot in my early 20s, was just like had a lot of good time together with my friends that now is pretty rare. So we're kind of helping that happen for people too.
Like you said, man, I think dudes especially, I don't think women struggle with this, like just open communication with like when the ladies are chatting, like I noticed this with my wife, like they tend to get into like deep, meaningful things right away, and dudes, we're talking about our scouts or we're talking about bikes, like we just talk about stuff.
Yeah, you're talking about this third thing that's out here instead of, like women relate face to face, guys it's shoulder to shoulder usually.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's such a service, man, because also like too many guys are too proud or too closed off to go like, I'm gonna go get counseling.
Sure.
But on these trips, like you get around other guys who want to be there, who are sensing and feeling that same thing from the imagery and story. They're like, I need this in my life. Yeah. Now you get 15 of those dudes around a campfire, and I can see how some really powerful stuff happens.
Totally. And it's also that like, around a campfire, you hear some guy talking about, maybe he's sharing that like he feels like he's just working too hard. His family is bearing the cost of his career. And you could be the guy who's sitting around the campfire, hasn't said a word, isn't going to say a word, but you hearing someone else's story, that sparks something for you, and you go home and say, man, I gotta do it differently,
Have you ever had to pull the plug on a certain rider? Like, bro, you're going to kill yourself. You're out.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the plug almost gets pulled on its own for guys. If you're on a motorcycle, like if you're out riding your physical abilities on a motorcycle, it's going to catch up with you over the course of a 4-day ride.
And how do you spec the trail? Like, are there options? Like, hey, if you're a noob, take this trail. If you're an advanced rider, take this trail. Or do you kind of shoot to the middle? Like, where do you kind of go?
Yeah, we kind of shoot for the middle. And I would say that like if you're a new rider, it more depends like how fast you're riding through the terrain.
Yes.
So if you've been riding your whole life and you want to be challenged, just ride faster.
Yep, got it.
Whereas if you're a new rider, we always say ride your own ride. Like that's our motto for safety, ride your own ride. So that way, it's not that we're taking you through harder terrain. It's just the faster you move through that terrain, it becomes exponentially more challenging.
Yes, I love that.
So that way, like, because we always get mixed groups. There's guys who have no business being on a motorcycle and guys who've been doing it their whole life. And we want to make sure that everyone's having a great time. Because, there's nothing worse than being an accomplished driver or rider and feeling like you gotta like
wait for everyone.
Wait, or behind the lead guide is just like taking it so easy and you're not even having fun,
Or if you're the slowest dude and you're like feel bad the whole time,
you're feel like you're being pushed, because that's where accidents happen.
Yes. Yeah. So you have like checkpoints or something. How do you manage that practically in a trip?
Yeah. So anytime that there's like a major junction or kind of a fork in the road intersection, we will either just drop one person to kind of mark the turn as like a breadcrumb.
Yeah.
and then probably every half an hour everybody meets up, because otherwise you get too stretched out and you're like, oh man, like Greg is in the back, bleeding out and nobody knows where he is. It's like you don't want to go too long before the whole group meets back up.
Such a cool thing, man. Like with the motos, like there's something about that particular context and medium of travel that like is physically demanding, which stretches the mind, and breaks down like barriers in the mind. And it's it's raw, man.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, I think our DNA is really motorcycles. Now we do 4-wheeler trips, we do other kinds of things, but the bikes are unique because it's a couple of things. I think you are uniquely aware of the risk on a bike, whereas like on a UTV, you're driving one of our Can-Ams, it's like you feel like you're a trophy truck driver, even though you're not.
Yes.
And then you get into trouble.
Aren't those things nuts?
They're incredible.
Yeah.
Whereas on a bike, it's like you really feel yourself pushing your limits, and it's much more apparent that you're a part of the machine. And the other cool thing about the bikes is that it takes near total focus. So you do 4 days of riding a bike, full focus, physical and mental. It just like washes your mind clean.
That's cool.
There's no daydreaming. If you daydream, you're going to be in trouble. So it's like this really great practice for your brain to just be focused on this one thing. So you're not thinking. I remember this was before I started the business with the $600 squirrel in the airbox DR350 that I bought.
Great bike. Kickstart?
No, it was electric.
Because dude, I just got one of those. I was like, I need a DR350, but I bought like it was non-running, and it was like a 91.
Yeah.
So like kickstart only, and I like to think I'm capable. I'm only 150 pounds, and I could not start. Like I'd be like jumping on
misery.
I can't start this stupid. I sold it.
Yeah, this one was in the E-Start years, but I had bought it, and then me and my buddy were like, let's go to Baja. So I put like 1,200 miles on this bike, and it was terrible. Like I put like a gallon of oil in a day. I could pull the chain off by hand by the time I got back to Ensenada. The swing arm was completely backed out. But what I learned on this trip, this was like my first big moto, like solo moto camping off the bikes trip. And I was planning on, in my brain, I was like, I'm gonna have all this great time to think about the business, like come up with all these ideas and do all this like thought and like really get clear. And it was like, I accomplished none of that. It was like cactus, cactus, rock, cactus, rock. That's all my brain was thinking about for like 1,200 miles, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really good. Like it was a different kind of profitable mental space to be in.
Yeah, because I think in like a scout, you have to have a next level of concentration versus like a modern Rubicon.
Sure,
like,
it's a physical driving experience.
Yeah, my buddy's TRD5 Tacoma, like you literally like put it in like crawl mode, take your foot off the gas, and it just does, all you have to do is steer it.
Yeah.
So it's like you can daydream a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is part of the danger of people being out of their ability.
Yeah.
But in a scout, I can definitely see that, because you can, it's immersive, and I love that. And that's part of the charm and the memory making ability of a scout, is like that they are visceral, and you have to drive it, and sometimes like rodeo drive it,
Yeah.
Like I was just driving down, I'm driving my 67 Scout 800, and this is a funny statement from a scout guy, but I'm like, this is probably the worst handling vehicle I've ever. It's like I'm just bouncing down the 101, like I had to take my seatbelt off because it was like physically like.
Oh my gosh.
That's why we build modern suspension.
Exactly.
Trucks.
Yeah.
That in the moment thing, that's just got me thinking, man. Like that's a pretty powerful concept of not being able to daydream, not being able to think about other things, and how often. I don't know about you, man, but I'm always going 10 different directions, and I think a lot of people are, like the phone included. The phone is a big enabler.
Yeah, it enables that. Yeah.
What if you could speak a little bit to our kind of 4x4 community? So you have you bring chase trucks on every trip.
Yeah.
Talk about what the chase trucks kind of enable on the trips.
Right. So we do our trips differently than most. So most like moto tour companies or whatever, you end the day in some tiny little town at a motel.
Yeah.
and you let your hair down, eat whatever food is there, and then you go back out into the wild the next day. I've worked really hard to build trips where we're keeping the magic of the wilderness alive, right? So we want to be off grid as long as possible. And that's really only possible with a chase support truck. So we always bring like a full-size Super Duty behind the group. And that truck is going down 90% of the trails that we're going down. So they're, you know, trails that are definitely Jeep trails that we're squeezing a Super Duty through.
And like you said, sometimes you're mobbing those things, right? Like,
oh yeah, they're going fast and they're going slow.
Yeah.
But the truck is carrying everything. It's carrying all the medical supplies. It's carrying all the full tools, air compressors, tire plugs, everything you need. It's got 2 refrigerators on board. It's my chef is driving the truck, so you don't want to lose the chef. He's the most important guy on the trip. So it helps us do our hospitality experience in a way that feels really seamless for the clients. We've got extra fuel on them, so people will be like, to do 400 miles through the Arizona Strip unsupported, you need for 14 to 18 people, you need a lot of water, a lot of fuel, a lot of food.
Right.
And it allows us to kind of pull off this like really special, experience. We're kind of like hacking reality a bit, because if it was just you out there just on your dirt bike, it's like, yeah, you could do it for a while. You could do it for a couple of days, and then you got to resupply.
And then you also intermix the capacity of the bikes, because these are like street legal dirt bikes.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing to do 400 miles solo, you're gonna need to get a bigger bike, which then limits the off-road.
Yeah, or you need a big desert tank, or there's all kinds of different things.
So the riders are carrying. What are the riders actually carrying?
Yeah, so we've got the giant loop saddlebag system on the bikes that is basically 40 liters of storage. So you just stuff all your clothes in there.
Okay.
Chase truck carries your sleeping bag and ground pad.
So you're carrying your clothes. I like that.
Yeah, you're carrying your stuff. We don't have room for everybody's crap.
Okay.
And that way it limits what people can bring. We're like, if it doesn't fit in the bag, you can't bring it.
Yeah. But plus it also, we've talked about this a little bit before, but it's like bringing your clients towards greater competence.
Yeah.
Which removes barriers to entry for them just living this, integrating this into their lifestyle even more. So when they have to pack that bag, they're going like, if I get a bike, I know how to pack my bag now.
Yeah. And you know what not to bring, Everybody brings too much every time.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
At the start of the trip, you're like, nope.
Oh, 100%. And then even still, it's in like the biggest, boldest font possible in our packing list. It says, trust us, everyone brings too much. And they still do.
They bring too much.
Yeah.
That's funny. I remember like my first backpacking trip. I was inexperienced. I don't know what. I came from the East Coast where like backpacking is not, in Connecticut where it's not really a thing.
It's walking.
Yeah, but I came out west in California where I was on this pretty epic deer hunt, like high altitude and elevation. And I brought like my 4D cell mag light, like full size like book, like it was just like, dude.
Yeah, my favorite thing in like that space is the saying, ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain.
Yes, ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. Remember that. And that is another thing on like scouts, like unless you have a full family in a scout, like we have some families of 5 that do multi-day trips in a scout, which is impressive because that's a lot of stuff. But if you're a solo dude or just got you and a buddy, that's a ton of cargo space compared to 40 liters.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So that's a good discipline.
Yeah.
So the chase trucks. How many typical? Do you have 2 chase trucks?
Just one per trip.
Trip,
so it's kind of bringing up the rear.
And if a bike, have catastrophic breakages of bikes?
Yeah, so our chase trucks tow like a military trailer, like an M101 Hummer trailer.
Yep.
And on those trailers, like on our moto trips, we'll have at least 1 or 2 spare bikes on there, like fresh bikes ready to go. So if a bike goes down, we can just hot swap it instead of needing to open apart, the engine casing at camp, which we've done.
Wow.
But trying to, I have these rules for guiding, and one of them is, don't let the tail wag the dog, right? So it's like, we could fix this bike here on the trail, but the goal is to keep the trip moving, so let's just swap it with a fresh bike.
Yep.
On our UTV trips, we've got a flatbed version of that trailer where we can, and I actually extended it, customized it, where we can drive a machine onto it And that way, if a machine goes down, you can haul it out of the desert.
Yes. So, and again, if you could speak to our four-wheel drive crowd, you have this unique experience of like, you have a ton of experience, not only on motos, but with trucks, like equipment. So, what is, and one debate in the overlanding community, or just off-road camping, whatever you want to call it, is like the people who say like, you're bringing too much stuff. You just went on like every overland store and bought everything you could possibly get your hands on, versus like the minimalist who's like, I brought a sheet, a bed sheet, I sleep in the rocks. So what is some essential gear that you've learned for, like, let's say the bikes weren't really a part of it, you were just going on the trucks. What is some key essential gear?
Top of the list is blue shop towels.
Blue shop, yes.
For any kind of camping.
That's smart.
That is the greatest paper towel ever made.
It's funny, because I agree with you. It's like, that's not, I'd be like, oh, rooftop tent, fridge.
No, blue shop towels. It's first.
Good.
I mean, kind of like vehicle overland style camping. I guess like it sounds basic, but like, dude, tire plugs and an air compressor is like, that's like a hard non-negotiable. A lot of our trips were in this kind of like volcanic, shaly junk in the Arizona Strip going down to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And like we blow through serious amounts of tires. I think, again, it doesn't maybe sound as adventurous, but it's wise, is I think it's crazy to go out without some kind of sat communicating device these days. Like, I think it's irresponsible if you have a family or anyone who you care about, because they're just so affordable now.
And how much is a basic?
Oh man, like $200.
Okay. That's another thing, like, I think a lot of dudes go without, and they're just like, oh, this cell phone.
Because that's the thing, if you have that, then you actually need to bring a lot less, in terms of, you don't need to bring like an entire mechanics tool set with you, because if you really get into trouble, well, then you can get help. In terms of other practical things, we're always bringing the basics. We bring like as full of tools as we can. We're bringing fluids. Our trucks are really capable. They're all just like, they're tools, not toys. So everything on the trucks is really like, it's there for a reason. Whether that's the winch, the high lift, the cargo glide. Like, it's all this stuff that if a friend was like, hey, I'm thinking of getting into camping, I'd be like, well, you don't need all this.
Right.
But a winch, like that's pretty non-negotiable in my book, So it's kind of the basics. Like, we don't go crazy with all the bells and whistles that you could have, especially doing what we do. We could.
That's what I liked. I noticed about just observing your small fleet. It's like they just, it's all like, you could tell it's honed and not frivolous. Like it's just screams capable functionality.
Totally. I was sharing this with you before, but like, the greatest vehicle I ever owned was, I bought a 2003 F-250 Super Duty. So it's the V8 gas.
This is an 03, I'm sorry.
It's an 03.
03, okay.
The V8 gas, so it was not the diesel, it was an underpowered motor. I bought it off some gardener on Craigslist, and I ran my business for 6 years with that truck as the chase truck. It got stolen twice, LAPD recovered it twice. It has just been through so much, and I've never had a better vehicle. And the thing was bone stock. It was the off-road package with just 33-inch tires, no extra lift, and a winch.
Wow.
That was it.
That's cool.
And it's honestly gotten through more than my fancy SEMA truck that we built with Ford.
Yep. That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys tent camp? Like, do you always do tents?
Yeah, we do tent camping, or just sleeping under the stars is the best way to go. Yeah.
What is that? What do you just put the sleeping pad on the ground, or you get a little ground pad?
No, I like to do a ground mat, then like a ground cover, like a little tarp, ground pad, sleeping bag. And it's actually fun. So a lot of our clients, they'll have gone camping before. Some of them have like never even slept in a tent before. But most of them have like been camping before. A lot of people have never slept under the stars. And it like creeps them out. And so we always like try to, like, by the third night, try to get as many of the guys sleeping under the stars as we can. Cool, man. It's a cool experience.
What do you, so talk a little bit about your basic trips. Like, where do you guys go?
Sure. Yeah. So we run, our niche is power sports, right? So it's dual sport moto trips, UTV trips. We do snowmobile trips. We've done, in Alaska and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Jeez. we've done a whole bunch of other trips. We've done horse trekking, backpacking, surfing and sailing, but like the business has become power sports trips. So our best-selling routes are, we've got a 4-day ride to Yosemite. It's about 80% off-road and dirt. We've got a 4-day loop through Death Valley. We've got a ride from Lake Tahoe down to Yosemite that we run every once in a while. Right. We've got a ride from St. George, Utah to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon and back. That's a really popular one. And for this year, our brand new route is, we go from Zion National Park to Bryce Canyon, basically. So cool. And that trip is really amazing. It's kind of like a combination of our Yosemite route and our Grand Canyon route in a way. So those are the main routes right now. So it's kind of everything that we can drive to from LA here. And we've got a real focus on right now the southwestern states.
Yes.
But you know, as we continue to expand, we're going to be moving to other regions. But for practical reasons, it has really worked well to really like kind of have a firm foothold in California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah.
Yeah, what does it look like to, because it's such a good service, dude. I know you know this, but like from an outsider perspective and like being in the industry and interacting with a lot of guys, like this is a really important thing for marriages, for families, for just guys' mental health, and I'm sure you've got tons of stories.
Yeah.
Of making friends and of seeing dudes make lifelong friends from a 4-day trip.
Yeah.
Do you have that like repeat guys?
Dude, totally. It'll be like a public group, like strangers, and then like a year later they're having like a trip reunion that doesn't even involve us, like somewhere at their lake house in Minnesota.
That's
or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So what does it look like? Because we're in this conversation with New Legend around like, do we try to scale? Like, do we try to do whatever, you know, like what does the future of New Legend look like? What is the future of Wilderness? You and I were talking about focusing and honing in on like really what is the essence of your brand and of your business.
Yeah.
And how long have you been? 9 years?
9 years.
9 years. Which is a good run, man. So yeah, what is it? Do you keep growing? Do you just like kind of where are you at with that?
Yeah, I've had a lot of different thoughts, I think, over the years with this, because like the standard scale playbook is like you just scale the crap out of this sucker and you try and make some exit or something like that, you know? And it's like, yeah, there have been people who've been interested in the business, whether that's from an investment perspective, whether that's from an acquisition perspective, and I've realized that, you know, right now that's not top of mind for me, because if you can't dream about what you do tomorrow, if I hand you a big check right now and you don't know what you do with that tomorrow, then that's an indicator you should keep doing what you're doing today.
That's right.
You know, so if my dreams aren't jumping out of this container into something else, then I need to keep those ideas inside of this container. So I think there's a lot of room for expression within the brand. I mean, my background is apparel and all this stuff. And like, we did a huge collaboration with Lululemon last year that was amazing. But like, I'm not itching to start an apparel brand through Wilderness just yet.
Right.
I've realized that the business really is these trips. It's the experiences, it's the experience design. So what scale looks like for us is building new experiences every year that our clients, our existing clients are going to get excited about, so that we can be a part of their life, that they feel like every year we've got something new to offer, another notch in the belt for them. But what's really important to me as I think about scale is like, I'm getting more excited right now about the idea of just geometric growth instead of exponential growth, right? So it's like, I want to keep growing the business at a rate where we're never growing faster than I can grow our company culture.
Yes.
So that is a scale limiter that I actually want to have. I think there's other limits to scale that are more like a glass ceiling, but I think company culture is a real ceiling that you actually have to work really hard to keep moving that ceiling higher and higher.
So interesting, because like I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who have like grown something special and they have that culture. But then like investors come along and they go, we love your business, like we love this culture. That's really what they're loving, I think, more than like than an actual like profit loss sheet.
Sure.
I think most of the time. But then they come in, they scale it without, they kill the culture, and then the business fails, and they're like, what happened? And everyone's like, this stinks.
Totally.
So that's,
and all your founding employees bail out, and
Yeah, that's helpful for me to think about too.
Yeah, so, and especially with what we do, like, our people are the product. Like, when you come on one of our trips, you're gonna spend 4 days with like 5 dudes who work for me.
Yep.
And unanimously, the feedback that I always get, I got an email this morning from a client who was on a trip this weekend. They're not talking about how fast the machines were. They're not talking about how great the view was. They're not talking about how warm their sleeping bag was. They're talking about how great the staff were. That they felt like they were on a trip with a bunch of friends who were just helping them do this thing.
That's awesome.
And that's what I'm the most proud of, right? So it's like, my people are the product, because we're in hospitality. Like I always say, like, we're in hospitality business first. Adventure is the context for this hospitality. Just like a hotel is a hospitality company that expresses the art of serving people through a place you sleep.
Yep.
For us, we are serving people by helping them have an incredible, safe, not too safe adventure.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how do you do that? Like, how do you foster that culture in your team?
Yeah. I think that it's, fairly family style hiring, I would say. So I get a lot of people who email us and are like, I've been an Eagle Scout and I've been a rafting guide for 20 years and, I can, build a log cabin in an hour. I'm like, dude, that is awesome. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the right fit for us. Right. So it's character first, talent second. Okay. Close second.
Yeah.
But it's like really like who you are as a person matters a lot to me, because anybody can guide our trips when everything goes right. It's when stuff goes wrong that it really matters how you carry yourself, that you don't exhibit stress to the clients, that if I'm not on the trip, because I'm not on 85% of the trips, that I need to be able to trust my lead guide's decision-making matrix.
It's so, dude.
That they're gonna think the way I would want them to think, that they can slow down and make the right call. Because sometimes it's life or death.
Right, that's where it's different than a hotel. Like the stakes are way higher.
Yeah, the stakes can be extremely high on our trips. And especially like if you make a couple wrong decisions in a row, that's how every single mountain climbing movie on Everest starts. You know what I mean? It's when you're out there, things compound quickly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, back to the company culture thing. It's family style hiring. It's trying people out. Like, hey, say one of my guys who works with me is like, I think I got a buddy who'd be good. Let's bring him in on a trip and just see how he does. It's kind of like our training program. It's like an apprenticeship program. Like you just gotta have 10 trips under your belt and seen some real stuff to go down before I even think you might be a good candidate to be a lead guide. Mm-hmm. Because it's trust. It's like, how do people react when things go sideways? That's the biggest thing, And then I think beyond that, I think you can kind of signal what your company culture is through your marketing. Mm-hmm. And we try to do that a lot, So in our films, if you've seen any of them, or our photos, we show photos of people crashing. We show photos of dudes who are out of shape, and that's our customer. You know what I mean? It's we're, we're here for the normal dude. Yep. And if you look at our films, it looks like a fun time, and it is a fun time, and it looks like a ton of work, and it is a ton of work. When I do job postings, I try to find the most miserable looking photo, and that's the photo I'll post. Right. I had a photo of a guy, we were trying to find some new interns. I have a photo of this guy siphoning gas, and it's basically almost going into his mouth. And it's I was like, if this looks like a fun time for you, then you might be right for an internship. It's we're just trying to be really unvarnished about it. It's it'll be the best weekend you've ever had and the hardest you've ever worked. Yeah.
So that's awesome, dude. I love that. You guys do trips on weekends. Yeah. So what do you do with your guys work a certain schedule? So I know my guys are if we work hard, they're hey, we hope we get overtime, right? Yeah. So how do you work that practically with them? Maybe it's a taboo area, but your dudes are working 24/7 for 4 days straight.
Right.
Every weekend. That's impressive, dude.
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. I need a big team to pull it off, so people don't burn out, right? So we've probably got 35 guys in our crew roster now.
Okay.
So really only a couple of my chefs are working like say 3 out of every 4 weekends.
Okay.
So, and for them, it's like their full-time job. For everyone else, they're doing something else. You know, it's like, and that's what I think is fun. Like one of my guides, he's like a tugboat captain. And then he guides like a wilderness trip once a month, you know, and another guy runs a construction company. So we try to keep it in the passion zone for guys, right? So it's like, if at any point you start to not love what you're doing on the trips or not love the people you're doing it for, the clients, then it's like, then you're approaching burnout.
That's
right. Because it's like, come on, we're getting paid to ride dirt bikes and like eat food made by a private chef. You think, how could you burn out on that? But you can't, because it's just hard work. So even for myself, I try to be on enough trips that I can stay close to the customers, close to the product. You know, I need to see how things, as we're scaling, I need to see how we're doing stuff. But then also not so many
like
that
undercover boss style.
Totally, yeah, 100%. That would be amazing. Go as a client, but you know, but then and not so many that it starts to lose the magic for me. So that's part of it, and I think that thankfully, like for my guys, like they're working incredibly hard, but like the thing we're doing is fun, and the crew starts to feel like family for them. Yeah, and so there's like a lot of non-monetary compensation. Yeah. And we pay people well as we can, but we are not the right fit for someone who's just doing it just for the money.
For sure.
You know, because if you're doing that, like you won't last. Like it'll just burn you out, you know, but you got to do it because you love it.
That's exciting, dude. I didn't even contemplate that employment style of like maybe they have other jobs and they're just coming on 1 or 2 trips a month.
That's what has made it work. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And dude, same with my business. When dudes approach burnout as a boss, you got to really pay attention to that because it gets miserable quick.
100%.
Especially like in a trip where they can so greatly, if they are the trip, like, you know what I mean? Like you're saying that you are your people.
Oh, totally.
They can ruin that trip.
Yeah, it can spread. Of course. You know, like if the guide is so stoked to be out there, the clients, they're gonna feel that.
I love that.
You know?
Yeah, that's cool, man. So that's exciting, man. I'm just thinking, I want to go on a trip.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking about.
Come on.
So I'm gonna do that. A couple of our customers have been on your trips.
Yeah, that's true.
And they just freak out. They said it's like the best thing ever. Yeah. And it's fun to talk to them and go like, they have a bike now and they're getting better at riding. And so I love that, just sparking. And it's just that there's so many wins. If it helps a father-son connect, or old friends connect, or just a dude recenter for a second, or go out and buy a bike. And
totally.
Go, I'm gonna integrate this into
build a healthy habit in their life. I mean, there's plenty of terrible ways to blow off steam or escape work as men. And you know what? Getting mangled underneath a dirt bike is, I think, a good way to do it.
Exactly.
It
keeps you young. Yeah. What are this other things are coming to mind? You ever had like 65, 70, like older?
Oh dudes? Yeah. Current record is one of our clients, and he's a repeat client. Him and his boys. He's did our entire Death Valley trip, and he's 73.
Dude, that's awesome.
450 miles on a dirt bike at 73. That's some life goals there for me.
Dude, that's right. Yeah. I'm actually really stoked. My son Owen is 15. He's got getting his motorcycle permit, so like we're gonna do a trip.
That's
together.
Amazing. Come on.
Before we wrap up, talk about the bikes you use, because I think a lot of like our clients and customer base, like there's some synergy to it, and I think like they got a Scout or they're dreaming about a vintage 4x4. Yeah. But a bike is a very accessible thing. Yeah. And like this is interesting. Unlike the allure of a vintage 4x4, I don't know how many bikes dudes are just like, I want to get a really old crummy dirt bike. I mean, there are, but like, because it's so much more about it becomes like the experience becomes seeing if this bike's going to make it 50 miles.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you said you were with Honda for a while.
Yeah, we worked with Honda for a lot of time, a lot of years.
The CRF 250L.
Yeah, and the XR 650L. So we had a mixed fleet of those two bikes.
Oh. The XL 650 is a pretty robust bike, right?
Yeah, it's like a tractor. Like it can do everything and it can do nothing well. It's like, you know, like it is the true everything bike. Like if I had to pick a bike right now to like survive the apocalypse, it would be that bike.
Okay.
For sure. But it's not necessarily the best bike for every situation.
And it's a little bit heavy. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
You probably run into that with your, like, one of your guys told me, he's like, I wish I was making up this number, but we literally had this dude fall like 50 times.
Yeah.
Like, not kidding.
Yeah, and then you're not stoked to have a heavy bike. So yeah,
right.
we've been working with Yamaha this year, and we've got a fleet of WR 250Rs. So
good
they're
bike.
Great bike, and they're all the same. So there's a couple things that are nice about that from like a maintenance and mechanics perspective. Also, I think it's good to like level the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, so then guys aren't trying to figure out what bike is right for me. You're just like, here's your bike.
That's awesome.
And we've got some performance mods on them. So like it's a really fun bike if you know what you're doing, because it's got aggressive geometry. It feels like a dirt bike, but the power to weight ratio is really nice on it. But it's not gonna, like, a guy who's new to riding is not just gonna get immediately destroyed on it, because that's our customer, right? Like I am not catering to guys who've spent their entire life riding and own 3 bikes. It's like, because those guys, they're gonna go out and do this on their own.
That's right.
We still get those customers and we're happy to have them, but really our customer is a guy who's saying, you know, I've ridden a lot on the road, I've always wanted to ride off-road, or I've always thought about doing like adventure moto stuff and I haven't bought the bike or don't know what to get, that kind of thing. So for us, a lot of the fun is just introducing people to this like new way to explore.
And these are, I don't know if you mentioned, but they're dual sports, so they're street legal.
Dual sports, street legal, they're plated, because all of our routes were pretty much on like, you know, Forest Service roads, fire roads. Technically they're roads.
Can they do 65 on the freeway?
Oh yeah, they can do, I mean, you can go like 75 on these things, 75, 80, but you know, we will gear them down often to give them a bit more bottom end power and trade some of the top end.
Okay.
So, because our trips are, you know, primarily off-road, so we're averaging 35, 40 miles an hour.
So if someone wants to jump on a trip,
yes,
how much notice do they need to give? Like, how far out are your trips booked out?
Well, this year, you know, we've been really busy because of COVID.
Yes.
And super fortunate and blessed to be busy. So right now, like, we're essentially sold out for the season, unless you want to come on a trip this Thursday. We got a couple spots. But really, I get 2 kinds of customers. There's people who plan a year out, and then there's guys who like are looking for stuff to do next month.
So they just get in touch with, they can go to your website.
Yep. Yeah, so on our website, we've got all the public dates. And then if you want to do a private trip and host a trip, you know, where like I've got 6 buddies or 8 buddies, you know, we're happy to do that, find custom dates and modify things on the itinerary. But generally, we just have public dates up. And we've found that I think my favorite trips are the public ones, where it's small groups of friends, 2 guys who know each other, these 3 guys, because then they're really excited to get to know each other, hear their story. Oh, you live here, I live here. And sometimes if it's a group of like 10 buddies who've like known each other for 20 years, it's like they got nothing more to talk about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No,
so there's not that same excitement.
Yep. Well, good, man. Thank you so much for being on the show. There's tons of other stuff we could talk about, but I know you're busy, man. Thanks for taking time on the busy day.
Dude, of course. Thank you.
So it's Monday. You guys just got back from a trip.
Yeah.
Last night.
Yeah, we have a bunch of stuff that has been destroyed over the weekend that we need to figure out how to fix in 3 days.
I'm going to snap a couple pics of some of the rigs and just for the Instagram.
Cool.
It's a cool story. But thank you, man. If you guys, I encourage you, listeners, if you want to get a little dose of some high voltage adventure, check out our Wilderness Trip. Steve, thank you. Another little sneak peek. One thing that Steve and I talked about is a potential Wilderness New Legend collab where they help us plan the trip. They actually plan the trip. We just bring our trucks. So we'll see if that works out. I hope it does.
I'll keep the people alive. You keep the vehicles alive.
That's right.
The deal.
Yeah. All right. Until next time, thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys again.
Thanks, Sean.